kind of like coagulate all these thoughts, right? We want that to just not seep out. On a beat. All right. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be going over something that comes up more frequently than it used to. Probably because I'm starting to have more conversations with people about nutrition and different ideas that they could do. When I talk about nutrition or like what's good or what's the more important things that you can do, I talk about calories in and out so we can convey, what is going to generate weight loss or weight gain, and then it usually leads into conversations about protein and like how much someone should have. People get defensive for some reason when you start talking about protein, and I don't completely understand why. It's usually people who are not into fitness who have really very strong opinions about what's good and what's bad when it doesn't pertain to them. But whatever. No, everyone can have opinions. It doesn't matter. Sometimes the conversations end up being about how much too much is. Like, what's excess? Is there any damage to your body by having too much protein? Well, we'll find out. So I did some research on these articles, and I tried to find a variety of different responses so I can assess how they did the study, if it was a study, and then from there I could determine what ideas are valid or not valid. Like, where does this come from? It took less time than I thought it would, which I guess is a good thing. So we'll start with the assertion. So the assertion is that too much protein is going to cause problems with your kidneys, and they're going to effectively be overused and then become damaged, right? That's sort of the idea behind it. And so I tried to find a study that concluded that this was the case. And in searching for it, I only found a few that I found a handful of arguments that said, hey, it does this and it's bad, but there's no reference to it. It's basically just somebody's opinion through something that they heard or an idea that could be construed and then manipulated and then used as a reference. But that being the case, I did find one article that says that maybe there's a correlation. So this first article that I'm going to be pulling up, and I'll put it here, wherever's good, I don't care. Somewhere that I pointed is going to be an article. So this one is through, it's called The Effects of High Protein Diets on Kidney Health and Longevity. Just reading the abstract, right? The conclusion of the abstract is that possibility of residual confounding within some observational studies and conflicting evidence from previous trials, long-term studies, including those with large sample sizes, are warranted to better ascertain the effects of high protein intake on kidney health. What this is saying is, one, there need to be more studies on it because they didn't prove one way or another based on their study. Also, they're saying that, hey, based on what they looked at, there are too many variables, and though they found something that could be connected to a high protein being a cause for kidney malfunction, they're saying that there's so many variables in it that if the parts of the study that showed kidney malfunction, they can't legitimately say, hey, it's caused by the high protein. It's like, okay, now that's fair, right? If you don't have enough information, then you're gonna do more studies. And then I kept looking, and this is pretty much as close as I got as to having evidence that high protein does cause kidney malfunction. Then I found the second one is dietary protein intake and renal function. Okay. Again, you could read the entire article. I read some of it, but even just in the abstract, they wrote that while protein restriction may be appropriate treatment for existing kidney disease, and that's really important, and we'll talk about that in a second, we find no significant evidence for a detrimental effect of high protein intake on kidney function in healthy persons after centuries of high protein Western diet. So what they're saying in there is that There's no evidence based on any study that they did that concluded that any detrimental kidney function would be caused by a high protein diet. The important part of this is that you have to kind of separate the idea that if you have a problem with your kidney, then the standard conversations around these things don't really apply, because you already have a problem with your kidney. You have to have different restrictions, right? That's obviously what you and your doctor would figure out. It doesn't apply to the conversation. I'm not talking about someone who's super unhealthy. I'm not talking about somebody who has a kidney malfunction. I'm not talking about somebody who's on the verge of having kidney problems, okay? Because I'm not going to give advice to that kind of person, right? That's not my job. The idea is if you're a healthy person, assuming there's nothing wrong with your kidneys already, then having an excess amount of protein is not going to do any damage to them, right? It's going to function at like a higher rate. You're going to have different output, but there's nothing detrimental to it. There's no damage to it. I kept looking, right? Because I was like, hey, I got to find something that doesn't say this. And I honestly couldn't find anything that concluded that any problems associated with kidney function were caused by a high protein diet. And then I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll just find something else and it can be a little more specific. Okay, so this one was through HealthLine. And I didn't take too much time looking at this one because it just kind of verified this is like research bias at its best. So I already know that I don't really need this article. One, it's not going to tell me anything different that I already know. And two, reading it even further, it's just going to, add bias to like what I'm thinking. So I'm not going to get anything out of it. But I will put that in there because it's easier to read than the other articles, all right? It's not necessarily like a study with a bunch of numbers and charts that you got to keep track of in your head. It's just an article that describes pretty much what I'm saying in a more articulate manner with better font. And then I also like to use a meta-analysis to kind of like coagulate all these thoughts, right? We want that to just not seep out. This meta-analysis that I'll put over there, the Journal of Nutrition, so probably legitimate. These articles also are within like the last 10 years. They're not crazy old, right? It's with decent research and technology. This article is a total of over 2,000 abstracts, 40 articles, using 1,300 participants for their analysis, right? So a good smattering of data. Analysis indicates that high protein intakes do not adversely influence kidney function on healthy adults. So if you are healthy and your kidneys are healthy, then you don't have to really worry about this. Like, you're not going to over protein yourself, all right? It's not going to happen. So I don't understand like that whole conversation. It doesn't really mean anything to me, right? It's just like people like to argue over things that don't matter to them. Because like the people who argue this to me, which is, I don't know, I'm kind of ranting now, but the people who argue this, they're not into it, right? They just want to tell you, me specifically, but they just like to tell somebody that they're wrong about something. It's like, great, thanks for your input, but it's not based on anything. Someone told you that, like your CrossFit teacher told you too much protein is going to hurt your kidneys. All right, thanks. It doesn't mean anything. Just kidding, I love CrossFit. It's great. I tried. I couldn't find anything that was legitimate that said it's bad for you. So like, don't worry about it if you're healthy. I mean, maybe get some blood work done, talk to a doctor, make sure your kidneys are healthy before you start on a radical diet, but you should probably do that. You should probably do that before you start anything that's drastic or a huge change to your system, because you want to make sure there's not something, you don't have any markers for a disease or something that's going to be contrary to what you're trying to do. In conclusion, there's not a whole lot to worry about, as in like you're not going to give yourself too much protein. That being the case, I don't think there's anything wrong with supplementing or adding an extra bit of protein as long as it fits what your goals are.